to also provide us with signage or help us with the cost of marking our streets so that we can limit or show the limits of the boundaries of what the access should be, so that people become aware this is private property and this is the access point, not everybody's lawn. Or one of the other things that we would ask you to consider is that you provide snowplow. I had talked with someone at the city about 5 years ago, and they were amenable at that time to using the sidewalk snowplow that does around the hike and bike in the city to just come down our path, which is probably 100, 150 feet long, to clear the snow just as they're doing a hike and bike. But at that time, our gateway wasn't wide enough to accommodate the plow. And we have since installed new fencing that does allow access for something the size of the snowplow. And that would be a huge benefit or relief to us, because that is a pretty onerous job, as you can imagine, this year especially. The other is that we would ask you to help us with bylaw support to enforce the access restrictions, and also any financial support that you might be able to provide for signage or modification that we might need to do so that we can help to control some of the traffic that comes through. We are very serious about mitigating some of the problems that we're having. The bylaws or the amendment, it reads now, it says pedestrian traffic. And so we are looking at things about not allowing pets, not allowing anyone who isn't on foot unless it's a mobility issue for a handicapped person, and those kinds of things. So we really would welcome your suggestions, your comments, and your assistance in dealing with this problem. Crowd control is probably way more in your ballpark than ours.
Is that it, Jane? Thank you.
That is it. And I would be happy to send you a written copy of my remarks if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be good as well. And I'll open it up for council. If council
Okay, I will forward it to Rochelle in
Yes.
the next short while.
Okay. Does council have any questions for Jane? Councilor Grace?
Thank you, Rich. I actually have a question that would go through to the Director of Development Services. So about the nature of the strata, is it private property as it stands now that would allow the strata to restrict people from entering the property?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
That's okay. I was actually asking our Director of Development Services.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Grice. It is private property. Restricting it, technically, when you read the right-of-way agreement, it says sorry, I apologize, I forgot your name, but as she explained, she explained that it does talk about having to provide free and unlimited pedestrian access by all members of the public. So technically, yeah, it would have to be at all times of the day, and it is private property. But that could be interpreted different ways. I mean, it doesn't make sense to allow people to go through there at night, right? But how would you go about preventing that? Would you put a gate up? Would you lock it at night? That's something, that town staff wouldn't really be able to help with. So is that what you would consider if you were planning on not letting people through at night?
I guess the first thing is, if we can establish some better limits, then we know how to proceed with what we would do. We could consider putting a gate up, but again, that would be a costly endeavor across the street side of it. It wouldn't be difficult across the hike and bike side, and that may be all that's necessary, as if we just had a gate that we lock. But again, we're only 22 people, so it would be a pretty significant burden to do anything very fancy. But we're exploring what our options are, what can we do, and also if we have someone on our property, if we have some limits, we can say you're trespassing, and we can call the RCMP and say this person's on our property, they're trespassing. Right now, we have no rights.
Councillor Nash?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's obviously a very difficult situation, and I certainly feel for your predicament. But I also have to consider the rights of the public and what we negotiated 30 years ago. I just wanted to be clear that you're saying it's okay. If we were to close it, you would think it's okay for us to move all that traffic onto other people's property.
It's public property.
No, they would
It's-
use the other accesses in front of other people's places. And you
At
think
least
that's
4
okay.
of those accesses are public.
Well, yours is also public. In the
No,
same
it's
sense,
private.
the other ones are public. The one at Green Wings also runs through the strata over there as well, as an example. I'm not familiar with the other entrances, but I just have real concerns with giving up an entrance to our hiking bike path. I know that the costs are the responsibility of the strata if they did decide to put up a gate, that sort of a thing. I agree with you that it is specific to pedestrian traffic. It does not refer to bicycles. I'm not sure how that you could overcome that, but if a pedestrian was pushing their bicycle down the right of way, I don't think that there would be an issue with that. As far as them stepping off of the easement and onto private property, the only way to prevent that would be the fence on both sides of the easement, which I don't think is a feasible thing for your situation as well. So I really don't see any solutions here that'll work well for everyone. I certainly understand and respect your situation. It's a difficult one. But it's the same situation that each of the entrances has. You're not alone in this. The hike and bike is a benefit to the whole community. And that's why the council in the past 30 years ago had the foresight to create the access to them.
Councillor Benjamin?
Sure, thank you. I completely understand the concept of multiple access points along the hike and bike trail for walkability. And I know that that's something that we've been, trying to make sure to do with every development as they incrementally go in down that side of the river. But when I'm hearing these concerns, I wonder how different are these concerns than other exits, I guess, off of the hike and bike path. So I'd be personally interested in knowing the inventory of access points that we have to the hike and bike. How many are on public property and how many enter directly into a strata situation like this one here? And then sort of take stock of what we have. Do we have enough? Do we have too many? Are there some that are perhaps closer to others than they need to be? And for ones that are entering onto private property, I don't think it's a bad idea at all for us to invest in a bit of signage, not just even specifically for here, but any others that enter into residential neighborhoods. Number one, you're letting people know ahead of time that you're entering into a residential neighborhood. And number two, for those that maybe are not overly familiar with the community, you kind of know what part of town you're getting off at, which also might be helpful. So I would be, I think there's lots of ideas here. I think this signage idea, some sort of a gate maybe where it restricts the width of access to one person at a time. I think there's lots of solutions, but before looking at those solutions, I would be interested in having a bit more information sort of on access to the hike and bike path on Meadows Drive as a whole.
Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. I also sympathize with the situation. I did take a walk. I walk there pretty often. I actually took photos of all of the different entrances today just to see sort of what the different configurations were. The one that's just to the north of you has a gate that says private property on it. Yours is unique in the fact that there is no fencing going along the homes that are at that access point there, where the others all seem to have fences or hedges or something like that. But the one that I thought made sense that might work for your situation, at least to sort of ease the traffic, is I think it's Park Valley. He's one of top of the Park Valley Estates, the one that's the furthest south with the blues, they're like houses. But they have a gate that's closed and it just says, please keep gate closed, no dogs allowed. And for me, who's someone that does use the path and does access Meadows. I've never gone through that one because it has a gate that's closed, and it doesn't say private property, but for me, it's enough of a deterrent to not walk through there or look at a different access point. So that may be something that would work for you as well. Thank you.
I guess I'm just to our CEO or our director has his hand up, so maybe I'll let our staff provide some comments before I have anything to say. Director of Development Services.
Sure, I'll just add, and then I'm pretty sure the Director of Operations will be able to add to it, but I did look up and down on our ortho photos today, and there looks to be approximately 6 or 7 accesses to the hike and bike within town limits. With my understanding is that all of them are sort of town roadway and town right of ways where the town maintains them. Whereas this is probably the only one that is technically private property with a right of way. Perhaps the Director of Operations can add to that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I was going to add that as well, what Randy just added. There are several other ones, but there are a different situation. I was going to suggest in the future, like it doesn't take long for us to plow that. We could consider plowing that to help out during heavy snowfalls. But if you put a gate up or anything, we wouldn't be able to help you out any longer with that idea. And it's just a suggestion. And then Public Works could help with some signage. But I'm not sure that we could help in other ways. Like even through development services and bylaw, it'd be difficult on policing that area when people go through there at night, or if it's early in the morning or something. So I think that'd be quite difficult. But I just wanted to bring up those two things that Public Works could consider adding to our list to help out with.
Thank you, Director. And just a question to our CEO, are we looking to make some kind of a decision on this evening, or bring it back at a future council meeting once we get maybe some more information on potentially the type of number of accesses we have in that area? Just looking for some direction here.
Your Worship, I think we need some time to take an inventory at all the access to the trail, and also do some analysis and provide maybe some options, like as Director of Operation mentions, some signage, but what kind of signage, and possible gate, what kind of restriction. And the enforcement is a big issue. Like we only have one bylaw officer, and to enforce outside of regular hours, that would be a significant burden. But I think we need some time, like come up with more information options, maybe bring to council at a future committee of whole meeting. And once council pick one of the options, then we can kind of have more implementation on it.
Okay, well, that sounds good. I know Councilor Bryce has a question. I was just going to jump in on the one comment Councilor Bryce said about is it Park Drive? I know that gate you're talking about, but there's no paved path to that gate, is there? And if you go through that gate, you're kind of on the lawns of people in that place.
It looks like this.
Right.
From the path. So there's a bit of gravel, and then there's
Yeah, I think it'd be good to understand how that access works, because to me, I walk by there as well, and I get the sense that that's a private gate, and if I went through that gate, I'm going on to private property. Whereas the one at the villas there is more of a paved path. I mean, it has to be a right of way at the end of the day. There's sewer lines that run through there. It'd be good to understand how that one works, and how, where, is there public access, or that was just a gate for the Park Drive residents. And you had your hand up, Councilor Bryce.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make sure we address, because Jane said their largest request was to have the easement removed. So if that's a possibility, what that would look like, if that's something the town would even look at all. But I don't want to leave this talk without at least addressing that if that's their biggest request. throw that over to whoever would like to answer. Thank you.
Director? I'm not sure. Like are you talking the right of way or just the public easement?
Right, public easement.
The public easement, okay.
Yeah, we don't want the other one. They have to maintain the sewers.
Sorry, I apologize. Was the question for me?
It was for whoever felt they could answer the question, so.
And it was regarding if it could be removed?
If the easement could be removed, if that was their number one request.
Well, ideally, the more accesses to the hike and bike, the better. I know that's not necessarily what the Strata wants to hear, but there's 6 houses that are on the same street, and they, you know, for them, it would be better and easier for them to go through the Strata. And I think the more accesses, the better. And you know, the other properties have formal right-of-ways where it's town property, right? So I just don't, yeah, I think the more the better for walkability.
Councilor Mattis?
Thank you, Worship. Based on my background experience, that would be probably a council decision to make that choice, and then staff would work with lawyers to carry it over if that were the case. I think part of the problem here that Jane refers to is that particular access. When you think about everything to the north of that, there are no accesses to the north of that particular access. Around, you have to go in through the same street pretty much to get at it at the back of the green. Right off
Meadows Drive, beside Lord's property almost, and then right to the bike lane.
It might make more sense to make that one more visible, because this particular one seems to be a collection area for the whole area to the north, which is quite a few people that would end up using this as the popular entrance, whereas to the south of 6 or 7 accesses that people will go to before they get to this one. So more visibility on the other access might be helpful as well.
Yeah, to that point, I think that's why for me personally, it's important to have an inventory. Because if we have an inventory and we can think about proper signage, not just specifically for here, but for everywhere, we can perhaps indicate with that signage where people are headed. So for the one that's the last one furthest north, I mean, maybe that says something like public access direct to Meadows Drive. And then this one says, you know, public access dawn till dusk, you know, pedestrians only through, you know, through the complex, Riverside Villas. And so if we have that sort of consistent signage at all of the access points, people will know which one to use, but also, you know, maybe they're like Councilor Mattis said, using this one because they think it's the last one, but if they knew they had to walk 5 feet further to the north and they were a straight shot right to the road on a beautiful nature path, maybe that's the one that we take later.
Just jump in quickly, Councilor Schwarzenberger, just that path to the north does not allow bicycles to go through there. So that would be some information that I'd be interested to know why. I mean, maybe it was put in there to keep motorbikes out, but if you can't get your bicycle through there, then that path through the villas is your only one on the north end. Councilor Schwarzenberger?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I think an inventory is a great idea, and I'd like to see it on an ortho if possible, so we can see from above how the individual links link up to the hike and bike trail. All the other entrances to the hike and bike trail go down a path and empty out onto a street. And this is the only one. It looks like it goes down a path and empties onto a street, but it's a cul-de-sac that's privately owned. So, you know, I think the public who uses it don't understand the difference between it coming on to Meadows Drive and it coming on to Red Wing Place. It's a strata that's there for the people who live there, or the roadway is there for the people who live there, and they're the people who built it originally. So, you know, I see the issues, and I think like I said, as my other colleagues have said, I think we need to get a little more information before we can jump into this a little further. Councilor Madden?
Just a quick clarification for Councilor Schwarzenberger. I did look at the map that was provided this afternoon, and that pathway goes all the way, it's laid out as all the way through Redwood Place, right out to Meadows, basically. It doesn't just, it isn't the first 150 feet. It's right down the road. There is a pathway.
Well, I'd like to see that on the order too.
It's in your email.
Jane, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was going to agree with, I'm sorry, I can't tell you apart, but the gentleman that said that it was the road, and if you stand on Meadows Drive and look towards the hike and bike, it looks like this one big road that just goes all the way down. But I'd like to invite council to come out and take a look, and I think they would have a really clear picture of what we're facing, because it's a combination of one, we're the northern, not the northernmost, but the most obvious northernmost access point. And so we are getting the bulk of all the people that live to the north, because anybody who lives along the river, they have their own access through their stratas. It's all stratas along there. And I think you would really get a good sense of what is happening to the strata and the access. And I appreciate your thoughtful comments on this.
Thank you, Jane. I think I'll pass this over, if I don't see any more questions from council, to our CEO to bring this back to a future meeting with some more of those and more information on the accesses and the type of accesses that we have in that area, and maybe include some of the other, a bigger picture of the accesses in town, which doesn't extend too far out, but helps provide all the information that we need, and we can have a meeting in a committee of the whole and have a good discussion about it and come to a decision.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think we need a motion for that. Do we?
Usually do that.
All righty. Thank you, Jane. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
we'll discuss this at a future council meeting, and
We look forward to hearing from you.
you bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to water matters. Water Regulation Amendment Bylaw 1351.1 for adoption. I'll just pass this over to our CFO, who may have a few comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to bring the bylaw forward for adoption. It had gone to the Inspector of Municipalities to approve it, because the bylaw wasn't unanimously approved by all members of council. And so we have the documentation there that it's been approved by the Inspector of Municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. Any questions for the CFO? Councilor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Worship. Maybe, possibly for people tuning in, the CFO could just give us the percentage increase that this amendment bylaw provides.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. It's 5% in 2022 and 5% in 2023. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any hands up. Can I get a mover of the motion that council adopt the water regulation amendment bylaw 1351.1? Moved. Second. Any further discussion or questions? Not seeing any, I will call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, electronic meetings, council procedure amendment bylaw 1364.02. I will pass this over to our corporate officer. It's here for first and second reading.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to seek council's enactment of council procedure amendment bylaw 1364.02. The amendments speak to amendments in the community charter through Bill 10 by the provincial government, regarding electronic meetings. Our procedure bylaw currently has provisions for electronic meetings. However, I wish to match the provisions in the charter with our bylaw. As well, it contains an additional amendment to the public under the order of business and proceedings in business, just to add the proclamation item that was missing from our list of items. So the bylaw will need to be advertised in the paper for 2 consecutive weeks. And of course, there comes with that charge on that. As you know, Municipal Affairs adopted Bill 10 in September 29th. That rescinded Public Health Order M192, which allowed for electronic meetings. Since we had that authority in our bylaw, I didn't rush an amendment through, but this is just the amendment now to clean up that aspect. As well, recent information from our law library with our solicitor. They provide a little bit of information on hybrid meetings, which we're conducting this evening. There was no changes in the community charter, but they don't see any issue with holding a hybrid meeting. It's really ensuring that the public can hear, watch, or see the proceedings of a council, whether or not it's electronic or in person. With regards to public hearings, there's no change that's required to our bylaw. That was just conferred statutorily to local governments in the Local Government Act, that public hearings can be held electronically, and the same way is that that information must enable participants to hear, to watch and hear, and hear each other, and that we advertise that so people are well aware of public hearings and how they're going to be conducted. Meetings of other bodies, we have advisory committees, our airport, downtown advisory, and community safety. These advisory committees don't exercise the powers of a council. If they have resolutions that they wish to ask council to proceed, we bring that resolution to council for your endorsement, so they don't carry those powers. Those advisory committees, like a municipal commission or a parcel tax row, they are conferred some additional powers, and they must conduct their meetings in person. They don't have the ability to conduct them electronically. I can take any questions if council has them, but the resolution before council this evening is that Council Procedure Amendment Bylaw 1364.02 be read a first and second time, and that council directs staff to proceed with the public notification as prescribed in the community charter, and that third reading and adoption of the Council Procedure Amendment Bylaw 1364.02 be scheduled for a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move the recommendation as read by the administrative officer.
Second. Moved in second. Any questions for the clerk officer? Seeing any, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to item 3, General Local Government Election Amendment Bylaw 1376.02. Again, I'll pass this over to our clerk officer. It's here for first, second, and third reading.
Thank you, Worship. The purpose of this report is to seek enactment of General Local Government Election Amendment Bylaw 1376.02. Back in March, Council, we amended the bylaw to enable for mail-in ballots in preparation for, we thought we might be having some type of a referendum. So we were trying to prepare in the middle of a pandemic to allow people to come in or to get a ballot by mail-in ballot. Since that time, the province has amended the act through Bill 10, and that removes all the limitations that a person can request a mail-in ballot. Anybody can request a mail-in ballot now. I included the expert before repeal, and before it was like you had to have a disability or an illness or injury or you expect to be absent. So all of those requirements have been removed. So the resolution before council is that council give First three readings to General Local Government Election Amendment Bylaw 1376.02, and that adoption be scheduled for the February 14th, 2022 meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. Any questions for the Corporate Officer?
I'll move the recommendation.
Move. Second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Anything to report this evening, Water Councilor Michelle? Anything, Water Councilor Stu?
Thank you, Worship. Nothing to report.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to development permit, variance permits, development permit with variances, 5966 Sawmill Road. I will pass this over to our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. Are you able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. This application is for development permit with variances 2021-36 for 5966 Sawmill Road. The applicant's proposing to construct a 4,000 square foot cabinet manufacturing shop and retail area, along with a 2,340 square foot storage building for its contracting business. The subject property is located within the industrial development permit area of the OCP and requires approval for the design and to address landscaping requirements. Secondly, the applicant is requesting to vary the following sections of zoning bylaw 1380. Table 8.2.1 to decrease the required off-street vehicle parking spaces from 9 to 6. Section 16.1.9 to increase the maximum parcel coverage from 60 to 63%. Here's a map that shows the subject property along Sawmill Road in close proximity to Co-op Avenue and Pine Avenue, and right across from the Public Works Yard. This is the map that shows the existing building, which will be demolished. The official community plan designation for the property is industrial, with the zoning being M1, general industrial. Photos of the subject property on the left shows the Sawmill Road elevation, and on the right is the lane elevation of the subject property. The property is currently fenced with chain link fence. Here's a site plan that shows the proposed development. There's two buildings separated approximately 5 feet apart. You'll see the front building, which will have the cabinet manufacturing, with the back having the contracting business. This is a floor plan that explains it even better. So you'll see the cabinetry shop with the retail area in the front. And it's my understanding that the retail is not a retail type business that's open all the time. It's more of a by appointment only and for contractors, other contractors looking to purchase material, that type of thing. And then in the back, you'll see is the Desert Valley shop, which is mainly used for parking the vehicles of the company. Elevation shows on the front here, metal siding, picture windows, a big metal door with an entry, and then the back has the 4 big garage bay doors. Staff comments, the proposed development meets the intent of the DP area as highlighted below. It features a front elevation with several picture windows, metal doors, a covered entry facing the street. A landscaping strip will be provided along the south portion of the property, which helps to improve the aesthetic value of the property. The property is currently fenced, as I mentioned, which provides a buffer from the neighbors. The garbage area will be screened by landscaping. These are the side elevations of the proposed buildings. And just touching on the variances, in regards to the parking variance, there is a reduction proposed. There is ample street parking in the area to accommodate any overflow parking. There also has been a precedent for reduction in parking spaces for industrial buildings in the area, with a reduction from 10 to 6 for a warehouse building on Maple Ave. And regarding the increase in parcel coverage, 3% is pretty minimal. The main concern with having buildings that cover, say, 100% of the lot is just the inability to retain stormwater on the property. So in this case, there is still space for a dry well, which will be proposed underneath the loading space to capture stormwater on the subject property. Options for council is council may choose to support the recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer back to staff. With that, the staff recommendation is that council approve development permit with variances 2021-36. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know we've had a lot of discussions about parking lately. I do have some concerns here. It did say in the report that there were going to be 12 employees of the business. So if we're looking at, I mean, if they're doing, I don't know what the shifts are gonna be like, but if it's a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 situation, that's 6 vehicles that will always need to be parked on the road. So, I mean, I went and drove there this evening just to take a look at it before I came in. So the street parking, would that be across the street in front of Public Works? Are we looking alongside of the building to the north? Because there's a lot of, driveways and other buildings there, so I wonder where the street parking would be.
Through to the Director of Development
You're on,
Services, who is muted.
Oh, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Grice. There is some parking on the building to the south, which is the, it's like an older warehouse metal type building. The cars park along in that area.
I'll let that say, thank you.
Councillor Bass?
Thank you, Your Worship. I too have concerns with the parking issue. I'm familiar with both of these businesses, where they have been located in the past, and there have been parking issues for staff and that sort of thing. And I understand why they want to move to this location, but I think that depending on street parking in this particular area, because it is quite busy with the recycling depot next door, with vehicles in that particular area, that on-street parking is an issue. I also know the previous owner of this building had issues with people parking on his boulevard and his property at the time, and ended up putting in barriers. So because of the numbers of people who come there during the day, it is a busy area. So my questions through the director would be, can we support the development permit with variances, with the exception of the off-street parking space variance? Can we give the other variances and the development permit without that one piece? Or do they have to come back? Mute.
Through the chair to Councillor Mattis. The design is sort of based on, the 6 spaces, so you can't really approve the design without it. The items would have to be addressed in one go, is what I'm saying. So it'd have to come back. They'd have to redesign and come back.
So much the same as Salamander Avenue is done.
Much the same as which one, sorry?
Salamander,
Yeah, similar to that, yeah.
thank you. I myself see a need for change here.
Councillor Schwarzenberg?
Thank you, Worship. Through to the Director of Development Services. And I believe there's 4 garage bays at the back of the property and 2 at the front of the property, if I'm looking at the pictures right, and I'm just doing it from memory. Is the proponent saying that none of the staff parking is going to be allowed inside any of those buildings?
Through the chair to Councillor Schwarzenberger, it's definitely something that I considered at the start. I think the original proposal may have wanted to utilize the spaces inside to count towards the parking. But to me, this is treated differently because it's storage space. So it's not, the use is storage, it's storage for employee vehicles. So you can't really count those as parking, because if a different business went in, they could use that storage space inside for a different purpose, and then there's no parking on the site, right? So I treat it differently, as it's treated as storage and can't be counted as parking.
Thank you.
Councillor Benjamin?
Thank you, Worship. To be honest, the parking didn't flag for me this time around. But I hadn't considered the 12 employees. I just considered the use of the front portion of the building, and it seemed totally reasonable that there may only be 2 or 3 cars there at a time. So a parking related question, and then my original question. The back alley is not a space I'm familiar with. Is it wide enough that you would have sort of street side parking back there for employees coming and going? And then my original question was to do with landscaping. I know this is part of a, like landscaping needs to be approved. And I know in other areas in the industrial area, we've required landscaping in front of the buildings as well as on the sides. And I'm just wondering what the actual requirements are, how they actually read. It seems a bit more, just seems a bit inconsistent.
Through the chair to Councillor Ventimiglia, just measuring the lane width in the back is a little bit wider than a typical lane is usually only 6 meters, and it does look like it is 12 meters. So it's not really it's not built out that wide though. So I don't know, we've never really had parking. I know people park along lanes, but it's not really, it's not typical practice. So that is a possibility. I know that there's underutilized space back there, but it is for it's the packing house's property. So we can't really accommodate parking on a neighboring business's property. But the lane is wide, so technically there could be some parking back there, parallel parking. And regarding the landscape question, yeah, I mean, it is an industrial area, so there is limited landscaping required. Some of the properties on Maple were quite a bit bigger, so there was a bit more opportunity for landscaping. In this case, because of the number of parking spaces required, it is a wider driveway, which then limits the amount of landscaping that can be provided. I don't know if the director of operations can comment and add to regarding the lane width in the back. It does look like it's 12 meters, which is not a typical lane width. And if we ever have requests for parallel parking along lanes.
I can add a few points through the chair. Yeah, I think that laneway is around 6 meters wide approximately for a surfaced area. It's fairly flat in some areas. I think the boulevard is a little bit wider on those property sides. So it would be on the east side of the laneway. So there could potentially be some parallel parking along there. I believe some of those other businesses are all fenced there too, so it wouldn't really bother anybody, I don't think. There may be some resurfacing that needs to be done. I haven't taken a look back there for a while, so.
Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Worship. If you look on the site layout plan, it says alley 9 meters wide.
Yeah, that's correct. Sorry to jump in right away, but yeah, I just wanted to piggyback that comment. And I found a survey plan in the area, and it's 9 meters wide with the paved width being 6 meters.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I may be misreading this. It doesn't show any fencing back there. So in actual fact, if parking was occurring, it would be in front of their access doors, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Because I heard Council looking at the pictures, there is 3 access doors along the alley, 3 roll-up doors. That would be the access, which I'm assuming they are going to be getting from that alley. So the part of the parking you're referring to would be in front of those doors, which doesn't work.
Councillor Ventimiglia.
I'm just trying to figure out what this. I guess, like, I'm kind of two minds here. This building is obviously a huge improvement for that stretch of street and that part of town that we're continuously working on improving. And so I would hate to turn them away because, over 3 parking stalls. That being said, I fully understand the comments that have been made, and it's true that street parking is already a little bit tight down there. And so if we're accounting for 12 employees plus customers coming and going on a consistent basis, then maybe that doesn't work really well. So I'd be interested in knowing from the applicant if there is any way that things can be reworked to fit a couple of extra parking stalls. We can definitely see from the plans that we've been provided that there is not a lot of extra space, but perhaps there's somewhere where they know that they can easily cut back without causing too much trouble. So I would be interested in hearing that. And And I would be interested in, just for my own information, having a read of what our landscape requirements actually are in there.
We just had some comments here. Yeah, parking wasn't a huge thing for me. It didn't jump out at the beginning, because we have allowed from 10 to 6 in other industrial areas in the industrial area. I did kind of wonder why there was a separation in two buildings. If you join those two buildings together, that gives you an extra 5 feet. You know, possibly you could create some parking there. I'm looking at the garbage or the refuse bins up at the front. Maybe they could be moved to the back somehow and rejig and create another parking spot there. I don't know that we need to get to 9, but if we get closer to 9, say we get to 7 or we get to 8, I think to me, I would be fine with that. 1 parking spot or 2 in this area. I'm not as concerned about as I am in some residential areas where the roads aren't very wide. Those would be my comments.
Based on what I was hearing, I was going to make the motion, this be referred back to staff for further information.
Moved and second. Are you clear, Director, on what information council were you looking for?
Yeah, through the chair, I have a pretty strong understanding, but I did want to point out regarding the separation between the two buildings. The reason why the applicant has separated the buildings is because a building of that size, if it was combined, requires the service of an architect. So that's the reason why the buildings have been separated.
Anything over 5,000 feet. You must use an architect.
Yeah, anything over 470 square meters, which is, yeah, close to 5,000 square feet, requires the service of an architect, and it's very difficult to find an architect right now, and the timelines and the costs associated with that. So that's the reason why the applicant has proceeded with separating the two buildings. So I don't believe that would be a possibility. And also too, if council wishes, if the mayor wishes and has questions for the applicant is online if they have questions at this time.
No, I don't think anyone has any questions. I think we're just looking for maybe a tweak, at least for myself. Is there a sense that council wants 9 parking spots and that's the number that has to be met, or is there a way, are we looking for the applicant to go back and see what he can do and maybe create another one or something like that? So I guess that would be good direction for the applicant. Councilor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I'm reading this correctly, a parking stall is, the ones at the front are about 20 feet wide or 20 feet in depth. And I didn't quite catch the width of the lot. 63 feet, so 20 feet deep and 10 feet wide. That's 600 square feet or 3 parking stalls, just to put it in perspective.
Director?
Thank you, Worship. The loading space, if the loading space wasn't there, they could get multiple spaces. I don't know if that's in council's appetite to waive the loading space and have them, because there is such a wide boulevard there. So the boulevard width you can see is approximately 6 meters. So a truck could come down and pull into that area and unload. And I mean, it is a busy area, but I feel 6 meters wide technically it could be off the road. So that's, if council is open to waiving the loading space, then they could have 3 tandem spaces there. Thank you.
Again, for myself, having seen other loading spaces in our industrial park where semi-trailers are hanging out into the street and you have to be unsafe going around, I, for one, would not be in favor of waiving the loading space.
Well, I do believe we need to give the applicant some kind of direction here, and it's either, maybe we need to vote on it. we're either looking for all 9 spaces on site, or we're willing to compromise and look at a variance for parking spaces. I think that's a question that we need to provide some feedback on. Councilor Ventimiglia?
Well, I was just gonna ask, and I don't know, are we able to ask applicant questions right now, or is that something? Yeah. So because the parking honestly didn't stand out to me when I was reading through. That's something that's come up in conversation, and I think it's an important conversation to have. But we're talking about 6 parking spaces not being enough because there's 12 employees. And so I guess my question is, is this a situation where 12 people are coming to work from 8 to 5 and everyone's looking for parking? Or is this sort of coming and going? Is this people picking up supplies and taking off? Staggered shifts? How exactly do these people fit into the space? And that would be for the applicant if possible, unless the director knows that information.
No, I was, sorry to answer quickly, but I would suggest asking the applicant that question.
Sure. I don't see any applicant on
Councilor Matts?
The issue in the past has been with the staff comes in, leaves their vehicles and takes company vehicles, work vans and trucks, goes off to work. That was when this was located in a residential area, it was a real concern with the parking in that area. It was. I don't know.
I see you're on, Warren. Are you able to comment?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely got employees working kind of 7:30 to 4. Definitely no parking is limited with the amount of employees we have. We do have the capability, we're pulling employee vehicles out of the workspace. They could park their vehicles inside the shop at the back is one option. The combined loading space for sure, as well as the supplies we are receiving are scheduled and not too frequent because we have quite a capacity in the shop.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, there's like 12 vehicles showing up every morning and looking for somewhere to park.
Not 12 every day, that's for sure. Some guys are in close enough proximity to walk, some guys carpool. So I would say closer to 9.
And may I ask just one last question? Because you put forward a proposal with limited parking spaces, what was the plan? If this went ahead as presented, was it just to use the street side parking for these vehicles?
Occasionally we might need to use street side parking. Otherwise, the back alley does have a lot of space. Also neighboring properties, we can get letters from, they have said that we could be allowed to use their space. Obviously, if things change in the future, that could not be ideal. But just other options we have.
Thank you.
Councilor Matts?
Thank you, Worship. Those are all great solutions, but as the director said, we don't know what the future holds. If someone else comes in that needs that parking. We're not just giving it up for now, we're giving it up forever. And that to me is a very concern.
Councilor Reyes?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I agree with that as well. We need to move into the future, and you know, if another business goes into here, I guess how many employees would be, you know, in a building of this size. But I think that's why we have our requirements in the first place. For me personally, I don't think we have to get to 9, but I would like to see 1 or 2 more for sure. My preference, just to reduce the pressure from the street parking.
Okay. Councilor Ventimiglia?
I guess I'll just reiterate my earlier comment that I think that this building looks like it would be a great addition to the street. And it's sort of exactly what we are looking for in that area. And it takes one usually to get the ball rolling. So I would hate to see this disappear because we're looking for an extra 1 or 2 parking spots. But I would be interested in knowing if that's possible or not. If there is somewhere that you know, can clip a little bit off of the building space to find another couple parking spots without too much complication. And I think that probably just takes a conversation with the designer. And if not, though, like I said a couple of times now, I don't want to see it disappear. I'd like to see it come back so that we can have a further conversation.
Councilor Schwarzenegger.
Thank you, Worship. I tend to agree with Councilor Ventimila. I think this is a really nice project that I'd love to have. I'd love to have a couple more parking spots. And I agree that, you know, we're asking for 6 spots now. And maybe in the future, you know, something would go in that's much more employee heavy. But we did set the precedent in the industrial section to reduce from 10 to 6 for a building that in the future could have a business that was much more employee driven than what the current is. So I didn't flag parking either when I read this. I'd hate to see it go away, but I would like to see if there's any way to finagle moving a thing or two, moving the garbage bins to the back somehow and creating 1 or 2 more spaces. I think that would ease everybody's concerns on this project. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councilor Madison.
I was just gonna say, what I'm hearing is that we'd like to see more parking. 2 would be really nice if staff is looking for direction. The gap between the buildings for the architect represents a parking stall and a half.
I'll just add a couple closing comments here. I think that maybe moving the garbage to the back may be able to create 1 extra spot. I'm also looking at what is considered parking lot 6 is quite a big spot. I guess, you know, it seems to me you could almost, that could almost be 2 spots instead of 1 there. Or a slight enlarging of that area might accommodate the garbage and a parking spot. I think there's some opportunity there. So I think with those comments, I think the Director of Development Services and the applicant probably have a good idea what council's looking for, and we look forward to this coming back very soon. Would that be fair?
Beyond the vote.
What's that?
Well, there was a motion on
Yeah.
the floor.
Okay, we'll take care of the motion, which was to come back for more information. Any further questions or comments on that? Seeing any, I'll call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to bylaws, sewer user rate amendment bylaw 1331.09. It's here for adoption. Get a mover of recommendation, staff recommendation of council. Adopt sewer user rate amendment bylaw 1331.09.
So
Second. Any questions on that sewer rate bylaw? Seeing any, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 2, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.2, development permit 491 Salamander Avenue. I'll pass this over to our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just bring up my screen here. This application is for 491 Salamander Avenue. It's in regards to zoning amendment bylaw 138020 and development permit 2021-30. The applicant's proposing to construct a 6-unit townhouse development on the subject property comprised of 2 separate 3-unit buildings. Each unit features a carport and living space on the main floor with 2 bedrooms and a den on the 2nd floor. Given that the maximum floor area ratio proposed exceeds the maximum allowed under the RM1 zone, a rezoning to RM2 is required. The subject property is located within the multifamily development permit area of the OCP and requires approval for the design and to address landscaping requirements. At the January 10th council meeting, council referred the zoning amendment bylaw back to staff for additional information. This version of the bylaw featured a rezoning from RM1 to RH1 to construct a 7-unit townhouse development. This application also included a development permit with variances to decrease the exterior side parcel line setback from 6 to 3.3 meters and a decrease in amenity space from 40 square meters to 34 square meters. The design has since been revised to reduce the number of units to 6 and to instead rezone to RM2, which is residential medium density 2, which eliminates the variance request. Property location map. The ortho shows the building to be demolished, the existing older single-family dwelling, and the OCP is high-density residential. The zoning being RM1. Photos of subject property on the left shows the Park Drive elevation, same thing on the right. The left shows the view from Salamander Ave, and on the right shows the south portion of the subject property, which shows the neighboring single-family home. The previous site plan, as you may all remember, showed the 7 units with 4 units being in the back, 3 units in the front, that 3.35 meter setback on the north side. Now the revised plan, the units have been reduced, so it's now 3 and 3. What that's done is it has increased the exterior north parcel line setback, increased it to 4 meters, and it's created more separation between the buildings to add in another visitor parking space. And then it's also widened the units. So what that's done is it's widened the amenity area as well. So it's made these amenity areas bigger between the buildings and the outdoor patio areas. Enabling a 0.6 floor area ratio rather than the 0.45 currently permitted in the RM1 zone allows for larger and more livable units for families. And this is an increase of 326 square feet per unit. The maximum number of permitted units, which is the 50 dwelling units per hectare, will remain unchanged. Therefore, there's no additional traffic impacts with the proposed rezoning application. The proposal is consistent with growth management objectives in the OCP that support efficient use of land within the town, including the infilling of vacant lots and supporting medium and higher density development in residential areas. And this will add 6 family oriented units in close proximity to schools and other services, which encourages more walking and active forms of transportation. In regards to the housing needs assessment, 75 2-bedroom units are required, which is broken down to 26 owner and 49 rental units by 2025. And this will make a significant contribution towards this. The landscape plan, the main revision is there's more amenity space now between the units, so more of an amenity area there. The front has remained unchanged, the front setback at 4.5 meters. So not a significant change to the landscape plan. Building elevations, you'll see I will touch on the main one is the front elevation, which you'll see in the next slide. The previous one had, there was no front door. So what they've done is they've revised it now. They have an additional roof peak, different material type to distinguish that difference, as well as a front entry door, which will have a connection to the sidewalk, which you'll see in the landscape plan here. There's a little pedestrian walkway there to the sidewalk. The development meets the intent of the DP area as the front facade features multiple material type. Each unit has individual roof peaks rather than the uniform box look, and obviously the positive changes to the Park Drive elevation. There'll be landscape with multiple trees, grass, and a boxwood hedge along Park Drive, and then there'll be the 4-foot wood fence along Salamander, which will have individual pedestrian walkways to the units. The main floor plan here, you'll see 549 square feet each unit. And the second floor has the 2 bedrooms and a den. Options for council is council may choose to support the recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer back to staff. Staff recommendation is that zoning amendment bylaw 138020 be read a first and second time and proceed to a public hearing, and that the holding of the public hearing be scheduled for February 14th, and that staff give notice in accordance with the Local Government Act. And in regards to development permit, that council consider it following the adoption of zoning amendment bylaw 138020. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Mattis.
Thank you, Worship. I'll start off by saying, wow, this is fantastic. The director did an outstanding job of working with the developer, and I have to thank them both. They've gone away and come back with virtually everything we asked for. As I see it, they've done a great job, and at whatever point I was more than happy to do the recommendation.
Second. Councilor McKeon.
I echo Councillor Mattis's comments. I was quite impressed to see this come back so quickly with all of the changes requested. I had a question just about our process in general, not related to this specific application. But do we have, does Public Works or our horticulturists, do they look at the landscaping plans as a part of this process, or do the landscaping plans just come straight to us? And the reason I ask is because like 95% of what's in landscaping plans. I have to Google to see what it is. And so I don't know if it's fast growing or, if it goes tall and straight, or if it grows into the street, or how these things are going to mature over time. And so I just wonder if the people that actually know that information get a chance to have a look and provide feedback before these plans come to us.
Through the chair to Councillor Ventimiglia, it does get referred to all the various town departments. We can definitely do a better job in the smaller developments or ones such as this getting forwarded to our horticulturist to review. So I'm pretty sure the director of operations can make sure that our horticulturist looks at each individual tree species. We're more concerned with ones that are proposed on town property along our town boulevards, as we have certain standards, but we do have a recommended tree species list as well. But we can definitely do a better job of having our horticulturist review the plans. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, to me personally, that seems like a good idea, and it's important moving forward, especially as we're starting to see more and more of these sorts of developments. Just so that we're making sure that we're putting in the right things and the right things for the zone and not potentially invasive species and all that sort of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I would just like to echo my two council colleagues. I think council came up with several issues when this was first presented to us, and the Director of Development Services and the proponent have addressed every single one. And I think this is a great project, and I really look forward to it going forward.
No, I don't see any more comments from council. I think all the concerns have been addressed, and thanks to the director and the applicant for working together and coming back with something we can all get excited about. All questions, those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Moving to zoning amendment bylaw 1380.216.005 Station Street and 240 Co-op Avenue for adoption. The staff recommendation is council adopt the zoning amendment bylaw 1380.21. So second, any further discussion or questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Moving to item 4, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.23, lots 5 and 6, KAP 64043. I will pass it over to our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. This application is for lots 5 and 6, KAP 64043 for Bentgrass and Meadows. And it doesn't have an address because there's no houses on it yet. So that's why we're referring to it by the legal description. This is in regard to zoning amendment bylaw 1380.23. In 2018, preliminary approval was issued by the town for a 27 lot single family subdivision on the subject properties. This subdivision did not proceed in its entirety, with the developer instead subdividing 9 lots along the west portion of Bentgrass Avenue in 2020. Are you able to see my mouse here when I'm pointing?
No.
How about there?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I have 2 screens open here. So yeah, so the original plan was for this whole, it was 27 lots. They decided to do 9. And basically, instead of finishing off the 18 single family lots that are remaining, so you'll see there's 18 here. What they're proposing to do is the ones along the outside, so along Meadows and along the property to the south, they're proposing to do 10 duplex lots rather than 12 single family lots. And then they're keeping the 6 single family here along the inside. So the duplexes will be along the outside, along Meadows and the property to the south. So this will result in a total of 26 dwelling units rather than the 18 single family ones previously proposed. Property location map is on Bentgrass Avenue. The OCP is low density residential. And the zoning is RS4 site specific. So this was part of a larger zoning amendment that occurred previously. Photos of the subject property, a lot of snow, but the Meadows Drive elevation on the left and the Bunchgrass Avenue elevation of the subject properties is the photo on the right. You'll see here, I put some red markings that show those duplex areas next to the 2-story multifamily project to the south. On the right is the photo that shows that existing single family area on the inside of that corner. This will show the future duplex lots adjacent to 225 Bentgrass is the last single family house in that stretch. Housing need report completed in 2020 says that by 2025, 59 3-bedroom units are required, which is broken down to 29 owner and 30 rental. This will make a significant contribution to the 3-bedroom units required. OCP policies. The low density residential policies of the OCP state that the town of Oliver supports these lands for single family dwellings, duplexes, secondary suites, carriage homes, accessory structures, manufactured home, parks, institutional buildings, and neighborhood commercial units and uses, rather. The proposed zoning amendment is aligned with this designation. The residential policies of the OCP speak to prioritizing residential growth and infill within the town's boundaries over the extension of boundaries. These policies also speak to encouraging higher density forms of housing in single family neighborhoods, such as secondary suites and duplexes. Staff consider that the proposed zoning amendment represents best use of the lands for the following reasons. The low density policies speak to establishing a maximum net density for duplexes of 45 dwelling units per hectares. The area subject to the zoning amendment is 0.46 hectares in size, which results in a maximum of 21 units being permitted. The proposed 20 duplex units, 10 duplexes, obviously 20 units combined, meet this requirement. The proposal is located adjacent to other 2-story multifamily uses and along arterial roads, which make it a great candidate for more density. The proposal is also close to the downtown, parks, and other services. The proximity to the hike and bike path encourages more walking and active forms of transportation. And there are a couple nice accesses to the bike path in this area. Sample elevations. These are renderings that the developer has sent as part of the application, which show the type of duplexes that could be constructed on these lots. Both of the designs result in a single car garage, which you'll see I will touch on the reason for the 6-meter setback in the provisions up ahead here. Sample renderings, this sort of gives you an idea. Obviously, this is just a pretty rendering, but you'll see those duplexes as part of this. Speaking about the site-specific provisions, vacation rentals are prohibited in the current zone. Thus, this has been carried forward just for consistency purposes. So there's not a bunch of vacation rentals on one side of the street and then not on the other. A reduction in the required minimum width, depth, and area of the duplex lots is consistent with this area. The RS4 zone has quite reduced widths and areas, so it's consistent with the neighboring properties. The proposed lots will still allow for sizable duplexes, so 17 square feet on each half to be created without any future variances. And the required front parcel line setback of 6 meters will ensure that 4 vehicles can be parked entirely on the property. So currently in the RS4 zone, there is quite a reduced front setback, but that's because these property owners, all of the buildings basically have double car garages, which satisfies the parking requirements. So in this case, if duplexes are being constructed, there should be that 6-meter front setback, which will allow a vehicle to park in the garage, and then in front of the garage as well. The current rear setback in this area is only 1.5 meters, which is significantly reduced from the 6 that's typically required in a single family zone. Thus, it's appropriate to double this to 3 meters for duplexes. This will help limit impacts on the neighbors and increase the rear yard amenity space. Options for council is council may choose to support the recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer it back to staff. The staff recommendation is that zoning amendment bylaw 1380-23 be read a first and second time and proceed to a public hearing, that the holding of the public hearing be scheduled for February 14th, 2022, and that staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. Through the director, so are all of the houses facing inward towards Bentgrass then, so they'll be backing onto Meadows Drive? Is that correct?
Sorry, when you say all of the houses, do you mean are all the duplexes facing inward towards Bentgrass?
Yes, so that they'd be backing onto Meadows Drive, is that?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's not any different than the other buildings along the stretch.
No, and they are nicely landscaped, I know, to the south there. So is there a landscaping plan for along Meadow, like the big sort of fence with landscaping like it is further to the south there?
Well, what would be required would be as part of this subdivision, they'll have to upgrade that entire stretch of Meadows Drive. Likely though, our standards may only call for landscape rock with trees. There'll be a significant number of trees along that frontage, which is quite a bit different than to the north. I know for whatever reason, there wasn't trees required to be put in that stretch just north of this along Meadows, but there will be trees put in this area. But in terms of landscaping, I'm not sure because this isn't a strata. So therefore, if we do require some sort of landscaping, it would be for the town to maintain. So that would be outside of what we typically do in these areas.
Thank you.
Councilor Benjamin?
Thank you, Worship. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, comments, so that I'd be willing to work the staff recommendation to give zoning amendment bylaw 1380.23 first and second reading and proceed to public hearing, and that the holding of the public hearing be scheduled for February 14th, 2022, and the staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act.
Second.
And I would just add to that, that I think, I was happy to see this come forward. I think we're quite often down zoning, and it's nice to see anytime that we can add more density in a way that's cohesive to the neighborhood and fits, and I think this does.
Any other comments, Councilor Benz?
Thank you, Your Worship. Great looking project. I think it'd be nice to get that last stretch of Meadows Drive finished as well. That would be a huge plus.
Okay, I'll call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to business, call for resolutions for 2022 Civil Convention. Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before council is to determine if council wishes to submit resolutions for consideration at the 2022 SILGA Convention. The SILGA Constitution requires that resolutions that are going to be considered be received by Friday, February 25th, 2022. So in that case, any resolutions that council may wish to have endorsed would have to be undertaken at the February 14th meeting. For a little bit of background, I just prepared a little table that outlines resolutions that have been submitted by all over council since 2016, and I've attached the 2021 SILGA resolutions that were submitted in the SILGA catchment area, and the resolutions that council brought forward at the last convention for your information. So I have a draft resolution that council directs staff to prepare SILGA resolutions, and then I have blank 1, 2, 3. So if there's any topics that you wish to discuss, I'll listen and we'll jot them down. Thank you.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. I've got a couple. I don't know if council will be on board, but we can bring them back anyways to the next meeting for endorsement. But one is regarding revisions to the BC building code to allow for tiny homes. And the other is around disaster response and communication between the federal and provincial government and the municipal government. I know this is something that SILGA is looking at as well. So should they be drafting that resolution on their own, then I probably wouldn't, but those are my two. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grace. Anybody else have an idea? Not seeing any, so I guess you can work with those corporate officer and come back at the next council meeting.
Yes, through the chair, if I could just ask Councillor Grace to repeat the second one, disaster response.
And sort of communication between the provincial and federal government with municipalities.
Okay, with the municipalities. So if I could ask for a little bit of support from Councillor Grice as we draft those SILGA resolutions.
I will write
together.
one and send it to you to make it look better.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So the proposed motion is that council direct staff to prepare SILGA resolutions. One, revisions to the BC Building Code to allow for tiny homes. And second, disaster response communication between provincial and federal government with the municipalities. And the resolutions be brought back to the February 14th, 2022 meeting for endorsement.
Oh, so moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? On the question, those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, LCRB application new outdoor patio at 365 Zinfandel Avenue. Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. The LCRB has received an application for a structural change involving the property at 365 Zinfandel Avenue and is requiring that the applicant submit a resolution from the town of Oliver in relation to the application. The application is to make an outdoor patio tasting area permanent that was previously operated as a temporary extended service area during the pandemic. This was previously discussed at council, and I have some answers to the questions that came out of that. So the applicant currently holds a manufacturer license with an on-site store endorsement. This typically allows a license holder to sell their products and provide tastings indoors. During the pandemic, they were actually allowed to have the tastings outside. The applicant is proposing to provide tasting outdoors on a permanent basis via the structural change. The applicant does not hold a liquor primary license with a lounge endorsement. Therefore, it cannot operate as an outdoor lounge type with food and drinks and that sort of thing. Also, we did receive a letter of support from the owners of the building to the south, which is currently under construction, a new single-family home, which I believe was included in the council package. It also should be noted that approval of the TESA on a permanent basis does not allow for the 27-person occupancy limit to be increased. So with that, the recommendation is that council resolves to advise the LCRB that the town of Oliver opts out of the LCRB review process with regards to the application for a structural change to the property at 365 Zinfandel Avenue. And actually, sorry, I should add, there was one other item. It was regard to the process. I just need to find it in the report here, but my understanding is that the liquor branch does conduct their own form of notification process if the town opts out. I do have that somewhere, but I can't seem to find it. But we were told that it wasn't a very clear answer from them, but we were told that they will do some form of consultation depending on the scale of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm pretty sure I was confused about this the last time as well. So by opting out, are we endorsing the application?
Yeah, essentially, because if council chooses to provide comment, then you can only provide comment if you notify the application and you get responses from the neighbors. So we'd require the applicant to go through a consultation process. Then we could provide comment. Council simply can't just provide comment. They need to take the feedback from the public and the neighboring properties into consideration if they're going to do that.
Councilor Antonia.
Yeah, thank you to the director for all of the additional information. It makes me feel comfortable to move the proposed recommendation of council resolves to advise the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch that the town of Oliver council opts out of the LCRB review process with regards to the application for structural change, i.e. new outdoor patio to the property at 365 Zinfandel Avenue.
Okay.
Moved and second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 3, our 2021 bylaw enforcement update. We have our bylaw enforcement supervisor here. Dan, are you ready to go? Have you got I think you have a PowerPoint too, don't you, Dave?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. And this is my first opportunity to address yourself and council. Thank you for having me. So I will share screen here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, this will be the 2021 bylaw enforcement section annual report. I'm going to bring up the text of the report itself. I won't read through the entirety of it, but I will give you a synopsis. All right. So the purpose of the report is to provide an update to council on the successes, especially of the bylaw enforcement section. In that I had started halfway through the year, it is focusing on the latter half. During the 2018 to 2022, in the 2018 to 2022 strategic plan, council and Your Worship are very familiar with this. There are two priorities that are relevant, especially to the bylaw section. And in the third and fourth paragraphs here under contextualization, I just briefly mention them. The one is the coordination between agencies regarding nuisance properties management. And that coordination should increase between municipal and regional district agencies. The second is priority 4 with regards to property crime. And there are several sections of that document that speak to it. I won't go into that portion as, of course, Your Worship and Council are very familiar with it. The overview starts here. So with that contextualization in mind, the following brief overview calls to attention noteworthy moments and processes that were at once challenges as well as successes during 2021. The intention is that Your Worship and Council may glean from this a clear insight into the state of affairs of the bylaw enforcement section. During 2021, the bylaw enforcement section maintained a level of service that was disrupted somewhat by changes in staffing, but that met the baseline needs of the community during the first half of the year. A list here I've laid out for Your Worship and Council, which are moments that are of significant developments since I took the position in mid-June 2021. I'm a little hesitant to read through the list, but if Your Worship would like, I can, of course.
Oh, maybe just some highlights, Dave.
Sorry?
Just some highlights if you need to go through the entire list.
Yeah, to me, the first few, Your Worship, are highlights in a sense. So the establishment of the standards for file generation. I'll touch on this in the PowerPoint presentation that I will be showing in a moment. That was significant for the department and for the bylaw section. Then the regular meaningful guidance, encouragement, and support of seasonal bylaw officer focused on increasing clarity of vision in the position. This speaks to the interaction between me and the temporary temporary full-time bylaw officer. We will be hiring one again, as of course you know, in May. And so that relationship was a focus for me. And finally, maybe I'll touch on the clarification, the interaction between the bylaw department and the RDOS, as well as with the interior health, environmental health officers. That interaction led to several opportunities for enforcement and for education in the community that I think were signal. There are, of course, a number of other points there, and should Your Worship or Council have questions, I'm happy to speak to any of them. I'll then move on finally to a brief plan outline for 2022. In the coming year, these are developments that we will be focused on, me working under the director, of course. promotion of see something, say something is something that your worship and council had asked us to focus on, and that has been part of what we've been working on during 2021, but it will be a main focus for 2022. Implementation of the app-based enforcement tracker, expanded animal control training for me, that's through Langara College. Continued research into effective courses of action for historical nuisance properties. This is also something that there's been action on during 2021, but through 2022, it will increase and accelerate. Dialogue with business owners in the downtown core regarding upkeep and maintenance. This is something that the Chief Administrative Officer had encouraged, and so thanks to him as well. Research into boulevard enhancement grants. This will be a project that we hope will begin, that will be able to be implemented during 2022, but it could be that the grants will finally be enacted, or that, the action taken on those grants will perhaps start in 2023. So that's yet to be seen. Development of the tree protection bylaw. That is something that we also have been working on through the past several months, and that will accelerate through 2022. And updating of the municipal ticketing bylaw is something that's actually nearly finished. And I hope that this brief report may initiate and facilitate dialogue, and I very much welcome council's questions. I also appreciate your patience that I don't have much experience addressing council, and so I'm quite nervous. So thank you very much.
You're fine, Dan. I'll just comment on that, the see something, say something. I really like that initiative. I think it's an important one, and it goes way further than crime prevention, public safety. It goes about a tree branch has fallen onto the hiking bike and people don't know who to phone, or there's a pothole, or there's a light out, or something like that. I think it provides a lot of access for the community to be able to let the town know that there's a problem in a residential area or a part of town, and our public works crews can get to it as well, because not every issue is a bylaw issue. It could just be a public safety issue. So I really think that's a good opportunity to engage the town in watching what's going on and reporting what they think is a problem. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship, and well done, Dan. Good job. So for me, see something, say something, I don't know if it's the way it's worded, but I find it a little troublesome when I think of looking at, signs downtown and that sort of thing with like the eyes, and, it gives me a feeling that, we're all supposed to be, I guess that's the idea, watching each other and reporting our behavior to the authorities. And I think we just want to be careful sort of how we're presenting this to the public, because we're trying to create sort of a fun atmosphere in our downtown and an attractive place for people to want to come and work and play and have their businesses. So just being mindful of the way that this is presented to the community is something sort of that's on my mind. It's not something I personally loved, but I think, we have talked about, having an app and having better ways of reporting issues to bylaw, to public works, and those sorts of things. And I think that piece is really important.
Councilor Grace. Sorry, Councilor Madison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for Councilor Grace, the good part about all of that is that we have our bylaw officer as a filter. That we don't want to turn down any of the complaints, but the bylaw will certainly filter that for us and send them in the appropriate direction, or reassure the person that it's not the problem that they think it is necessarily. On that note, though, I would ask in our next report, if possible, Dan, to have a breakdown of the bylaw infractions and things that you've dealt with, whether it's traffic, noise, nuisance properties, not too much detail, but rather just, if you're planning on 360 complaints next year, I'd like to know the areas that the complaints are coming in.
Councilor Rentamila.
Thank you, Worship, and thanks, Dan. I think, You did great for your first time, and I think it must have been part of your initiation to be put nearly last on a super long agenda. In your office by yourself. So I thought it was a great report, and I appreciated all of the information very much. I was looking for the breakdown in the calls for service, kind of where our heavy areas are. I was excited to see the 2022 plan. I'm excited to see things like researching boulevard enhancement grants, dialogue with business owners in the downtown core regarding upkeep and maintenance. I just think that it's really nice to have a face out and about all the time that people are beginning to recognize and are beginning to realize that they can stop and have a chat with. And you know, it's non-confrontational and not intimidating in any way, shape, or form. This is just somebody there to help people figure out how to best follow the rules. And so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add that we can have those stats. They typically will come in the form of a quarterly report. So we would have to report from, I guess, October to December of last year, and then it'll also have that annual number as well. So that'll come before council, I would assume within a month. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for our bylaw supervisor? Thank you, Dan. We look forward to having you back soon.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, council members.
Okay. Proclamations, World Thinking Day, Girl Guides of Canada, Corporate Officer.
Oh. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button and I lost my screen. Thank you, Your Worship. The proclamation request is from the Girl Guides of Canada. They're seeking council's authorization to light up Town Hall in blue on February 22nd, 2022 to support Girl Guides Celebrate World Thinking Day. The public relations officer provided a good chunk of information with regards to that, and blue is just the well-known color of Girl Guides. And last year they had 85 landmarks across the province light up in blue. So the resolution is that council authorize staff to light up Town Hall in blue on February 22nd, 2022 to support Girl Guides of BC Celebrate World Thinking Day.
As a former Girl Guide, I would be happy to move the staff recommendation that council authorize staff to light up Town Hall in blue on February 22nd, 2022 to support Girl Guides in BC Celebrate World Thinking Day.
I'll second that, but I hope we don't live in thinking till one day.
I was just gonna say, the world needs more thinking days.
Not seeing any more hands up, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Moving to correspondence. Correspondence dated December 12th, 2021 from Silva regarding call for nominations 2022 for members of council who may be interested in seeking position on the Silva exec for the 2022 term. I jumped in ahead of our corporate officer, but the recommendation is the council directs staff to support nominations from the following interested council members.
Thank you.
Councilor Grace.
Yes, I would like to run for another term as second vice president and would appreciate a nomination from my colleagues.
Absolutely. So nominated. So nominated.
Thank you.
I think you just need the resolution, so the recommendation that
I will move the recommendation that Councillor Rice be nominated, sorry, thank you.
So heartfelt, thank
Be
you.
nominated for the position of second vice president in the Silva executive for 2022-2023 term.
I'll second that. I was gonna say I probably shouldn't.
all the question, all in favor? Opposed, motion is carried.
Thank you, council, and the last motion is that the January 24th, 2022 weekly mail be received.
I was about to make the motion that the weekly mail.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis.
Second.
Second. All question, all in favor? Closed, motion is carried. See, council reports. Councilor Ventimiglia.
Just nice meeting, Your Worship.
Councilor Schwarzenberg.
What she said.
Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few. Friday, January 14th, I had a meeting with Tracy Lydia, who local resident of our town here, has her master's in sustainability, as well as with Director Houle to discuss affordable housing and tiny homes. So she's going to be communicating with Grand Forks to see how they were able to get their tiny homes project off the ground, and look forward to hearing that from her. Monday, January 17th, at Oliver Parks and Rec Society meeting, we had a lengthy discussion of the RVOS admin fee and how it's charged, and a meeting with CFO of the RVOS has been or will be requested to look into that further. And then Wednesday, January 19th, at our Silva monthly meeting, we discussed the upcoming convention, roundtable discussion focused on the disaster response challenges. The Princeton mayor reported that 10% of their population are still displaced after the flooding. So we'll be meeting again as a board to discuss what we can do as far as advocacy on that. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. While I did attend today's meetings, I have nothing to report.
All right, and for myself, I had a Heritage Committee meeting on January 12th, RDUS on January 20th, and today's meetings. Next upcoming meeting is February 14th on Valentine's Day, regular meeting. And acting mayorship for January and February is Councilor Schwarzenberger. Public question period. Is anybody from the public still on? Corporate officer?
Yes, we have two attendees. If they wish to raise their hand, if they wish to say anything, I can promote them. I see no response to in the raising of hands, so I'm going to assume they didn't have any public comments.
Okay, well then we will look for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second, all question, all in favor? We are adjourned. Council.
Thank you.
Corporate officer, should I leave the meeting from the computer?
You can just turn the TVs off if you want, and just the computer will just shut down. I'll be up there tomorrow, so that's fine. The remote is just by my desk, and you just point it to the north wall.
You need this one. Two different. Well, if we're gonna make it for 5 o'clock,